Pro Football Now. Week 10 of the NFL season is here. We can't believe it. Albert Breer, senior writer for the MMQB.com with us. So let's start with some injury news, and that's Jameis Winston. Looks like he'll be shut down for at least 2 weeks, although Dirk Cutter's saying nothing structural, really just that sprained AC joint. What are you hearing?
Well, my understanding is that he's been dealing with this really since September, and you have to be careful with these sorts of things. We see what's happening with Andrew Luck now. Even Cam Newton early in the year had his issues, and that part of your body for a quarterback is gold. And so I think this is caution as much as anything else, but it's something you have to monitor going forward now, and whether or not he's actually going to have some sort of major surgery at some point now, because now it gets put on the table. There are plenty of quarterbacks who've gone through this at some point in their career. Tom Brady had one after his second year in the NFL, or after his third year in the NFL. Drew Brees had one, obviously, coming out of the 2005 season before he went to the Saints. And Cam Newton and Andrew Luck have gone through it more recently. Something you have to watch going forward, absolutely. But for right now, I think the hope is that it's going to heal and they'll be able to have him for the end of November and going into December.
Yeah, let's keep talking quarterbacks here. A little bit different, though, with the New York Giants. They're just an absolute free fall, no answers whatsoever. But how are they going to approach Eli Manning in his future? Because obviously he's the franchise quarterback, but it just doesn't seem like anything is working in New York. And we know that Peyton Manning didn't spend his entire career in one place. Do you think there's a potential second landing spot for Eli?
Before, I'd asked around some about Rivers and Eli and what might happen with those guys going forward. And I just want to start with this. I think Eli's intention is to end his career in New York. I think he puts value in the idea of being a career Giant and what that might mean for him post-career. And so I think his choice is to stay right here in New York. That said, the Giants are very much in that window where it's time to start to look at quarterbacks, and they did it last year. They drafted Davis Webb. Now, that's not a first-rounder, but they did draft a young quarterback last year, and I think it's very much on the table if they keep going the way they're going right now, and they wind up finishing 3-13, 4-12, and they're drafting in the top 5. I think they're very much in play to draft a Josh Rosen or a Sam Darnold or a Josh Allen, because right now they're where the Packers were with Brett Favre when they drafted Aaron Rodgers. They're where the Patriots were with Tom Brady when they drafted Jimmy Garoppolo. They're where the Broncos were. Right after they signed Peyton Manning, they draft Brock Osweiler in that year's draft. And so they're right in that range where you're drafting a young quarterback. Now, the thought would be, of course, that you keep Eli Manning on so the young guy doesn't have to start right away. But once you bring that young quarterback into the building, the clock starts ticking on your career.
Okay, but you're making it clear. It would be the Giants. It would not be Eli making that
No,
decision.
I don't think. I mean, look, lots of things can change, right? Like, so there could be a new general manager there. There could be a new head coach there. And maybe it's not the guy that Eli wants in either of those positions, and maybe that changes things. But I think his relationship with the organization is healthy as it's ever been. His relationship with the Maras and the Titches is fine. And I think his preference is to finish his career in New York.
Okay, let's talk about the Vikings. Interesting quarterback situation there. Obviously, Case Keenum has stepped in. Teddy Bridgewater, though, going to be activated this week. And what does that do for Sam Bradford? Well, we're not exactly sure. How do you see this shaking out for the rest of the season?
I think now, this is something that's become a week-to-week thing for the Vikings. I talked to a couple of their players last week on the offensive side, Latavius Murray and Kyle Rudolph, and really it's almost become a rallying cry for them, where they realize we have to do different things to win, and we have to be able to win on defense. We have to be able to win with our running game. We have to be able to prop up our quarterback, whoever it is. For right now, the quarterback's Case Keenum. The intention, I think, is eventually to get Teddy Bridgewater in a position where he's going to play. My expectation would be that Case is going to be the starter and Teddy's going to be the backup this week. But if Teddy can start to show some progress, I think there's a very good chance that by the end of the month he's the starter. And you have to remember, too, Teddy was playing really well when he went down. Like that summer, and he's coming off of a really strong 2015, and that summer of 2016, you were seeing signs that he was doing a better job pushing the ball downfield. He was being more aggressive in the way that he played. And so they felt like they really had something going into 2016 with Teddy Bridgewater. Potentially career-ending injury changes things somewhat, but they still think very highly of him.
Obviously, the Vikings rolling, coming off their bye, but had won 4 straight, and now they go to Washington. Okay, the Patriots, this Jimmy Garoppolo trade that we have not gotten a chance to talk to, you and I. How shocked were people in the building that Garoppolo is no longer a New England Patriot?
I can tell you there are high-level people in that building who, on Monday morning, woke up with no idea Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be gone. And to me, the smoking gun here is Jacoby Brissett. Now, when teams that went to the Patriots, Chicago, Cleveland, San Francisco, Houston, teams that went to the Patriots in March and in April were told Jimmy Garoppolo is not available and don't even have to make us an offer. We're not trading him. Okay, so what changed? Well, in the spring and the summer, the Patriots tried to get Jimmy Garoppolo signed to a long-term deal. In fact, as I understand it, they were willing to carry 2 starting quarterback contracts on their books to do it, which is borderline unprecedented. Teams don't do that. I think they finally came to the point where it was, okay, that's not going to happen. And do we want to be in a position where we're going to have to tag him after the year? And then there's going to be some awkwardness here with that. And again, the fact that they traded Brissett in September tells you they were keeping hope. They were keeping hope alive that they were going to finish the year with both those guys on the roster and find out some sort of solution going forward. Because if you knew you were trading Jimmy Garoppolo right before Halloween, you're not trading Jacoby Brissett, who is still on a rookie contract, a very affordable contract for a backup quarterback. You're not trading Jacoby Brissett right before the season starts. And so this was something that I think evolved over time, and there was no grand plan at the start of 2017. Okay, we're going to try to sign him in the spring and the summer, and then we're going to deal him out of here in October. I think this is something that they had to adjust to as the situation evolved.
Do you feel like Garoppolo would have wanted to sign on long-term, considering how good Tom Brady looks?
No. I think that they couldn't give Jimmy Garoppolo the one thing that he truly wanted, playing time. And that's what it was all along. And I don't think Jimmy was unclear with the team about this either. I mean, he wanted to play. Now, a factor, of course, is what if Tom Brady comes out and looks like he's 40 years old in September and October? Does that change everything? I think that potentially could have happened, but it didn't. I mean, Tom Brady's playing like the MVP of the league right now, and so that made it impossible for the Patriots to say, well, you're going to play in 2018 or you're going to play in 2019. They couldn't tell him when he was going to play. And this is a kid who, remember, same draft class as Derek Carr, Blake Bortles, Teddy Bridgewater, Johnny Manziel. Zach Mettenberger got a chance to start, for God's sake. So really, for Jimmy Garoppolo, after 4 years of sitting, it was time to play no matter where it was. He communicated that to the Patriots, and I think they knew, obviously last week, that the one thing that he really wanted, they were incapable of giving him.
Yeah. Albert, stick around. We're going to have more with you in just a moment. But first, let's kick it to our friends at Pro Football Focus. Sam and Steve, they are looking at NFC East defenses. We think it's all about the quarterbacks in that division, but it turns out it's not.
I'm Steve Palazzolo.
And I'm Sam Monson. We are Pro Football Focus, and this is Well Actually.
Sam, I love good quarterback play, and the NFC East has their fair share of good quarterbacks this season. Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, and Kirk Cousins. But well, actually, it's the defenses that will determine who comes out on top in the NFC East.
Yeah, that Eagles defense has been an absolute force. They may have the best defensive front in the game, with Fletcher Cox wrecking offensive lines the past few weeks. Brandon Graham picking up in 2017 the way he left off last season as one of the game's best edge rushers, and those guys have been able to destroy teams up front. But I think it's the play of Patrick Robinson, a cornerback, that's been the real key to this defense taking a huge step forward this year. Robinson has 3 interceptions, 6 pass breakups already this season, and he's given them that number one corner they haven't had for the past few years.
Yeah, so when we've evaluated the Eagles roster in recent years, they've been one of our top-rated rosters, top to bottom, but they've always been weak in the wrong area, which is the secondary, and I think that's why it hasn't translated to wins. You add Patrick Robinson to the mix, having that career season, draft a guy like Rasul Douglas in the 3rd round, he's playing well. Second-year corner Jalen Mills has continued to improve, and don't forget they traded for Ronald Darby before the season. He might be the best of the bunch when he's healthy. But I want to talk about that defensive line. It's more than just Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. They have 7 players who have played over 250 snaps, all making positive contributions, from rookie Derek Barnett to Chris Long to Timmy Jernigan, who they traded for as well, also having a career year. That defensive line has our top pass rush grade in the NFL, top pressure percentage. That has been the key for Philadelphia. What about Dallas, though?
Yeah, for Dallas, I think it's much the same story. They've been able to get multiple defensive weapons up front, all working at once. DeMarcus Lawrence is the guy that had all the sacks over the first portion of the season, but now David Irving is back from suspension, and Tyrone Crawford is there as well, getting pressure. Those 3 guys have generated 78 total pressures, 21 sacks as a trio over the first half of the year, and they're able to go deep now, bringing pressure from multiple areas. In the secondary, I don't think they're as good as Philadelphia, but they've really loaded up on talent and youth. and those guys are all playing pretty well. They've started to be better over the last few weeks. And then they've got Orlando Scandrick back there as the savvy veteran, the guy, the schoolmaster that's able to get all these guys on the same page. I think that defense has been playing better, and against a tough Kansas City offense this past week, they were really good.
Yeah, and they've been more aggressive this season. Last year, they were number 2 in the NFL with the second highest number of three-man rushes. They had the second lowest pressure percentage in the NFL. This year, their pass rush grade in PFF terms went from 24th to 8th, and it's because of guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and Tyrone Crawford. And that pairs well with that young secondary. Jordan Lewis has stepped in as a rookie corner and played well. Xavier Woods is back there playing all over the place. They've needed to protect the secondary with that pass rush, and that's where it's all starting to come together. They've had their hiccups along the way, but I think that's the key with Dallas. While that young secondary is coming together, they're getting after the quarterback better than they have before.
Yeah, and don't forget about Washington. They're still in the mix there, and this is a defense that, okay, they've lost Jonathan Allen, but there's still a lot of talent there. They've been able to get after the quarterback. They've been able to make some plays on the back end. As much as Kirk Cousins is going to continue to blow hot and cold, this Washington defense may go a long way to determining their future.
Yeah, they've shut down the Oakland Raiders. They shut down the Seattle Seahawks last weekend. Washington will be in that wild card mix, and then the NFC East will likely come down to Dallas and Philadelphia, and it's going to be all about the defenses.
It's time for Scott's Spotlight, where we check in with Scott McCloughan, former general manager, one of the best scouts in the business. We get to pick his brain. So, Scott, let's start here. Now, this one is rare. Tony Dungy caught on a hot microphone saying that Jim Irsay, the owner of the Colts, believes that Andrew Luck's shoulder injury is, quote, in his head at this point. Listen, you've had to deal with a lot of owners and a lot of star players. Could this comment create a rift at all between quarterback and team?
You know what? I don't believe so. Jim talking to Tony, Jim's gonna say what he believes is accurate. Anytime you have a player, young or older, doesn't matter, that's had a long-term thing going on now, which Andrew has. There's always some doubt, because you're like, listen, back in the time I was rolling, I got this big contract, I was going to Pro Bowl, I was doing this and that. Will I ever get back to the same successful rate, same quality that I had? And there's always some speculation about it, because you wouldn't be on the field. And knowing Andrew, because I kind of do know him, that he wants to be out there. He wants to be with the team. He wants to practice. He wants to go out there and play on Sundays. And there's always a thought in the back of your mind, like, maybe this is it. Possibly, can I really return to where I was at? Because I'm used to being successful and being a really good player. I think Tony got caught off guard, because I saw what happened. And, Tony didn't mean any harm by it whatsoever. I promise you, Jim, if he said it to him, meant no harm, by it. It's just physical and a mental state that you get in as a football player, because you're so used to being the best. You're so used to being the most talented. You're so used to physically, emotionally, mentally, and that's why he's balled so well. And all of a sudden, now you have been on the field for over a year. It's just like, wow, can I get back to where I want to be at?
Well, obviously, Scott, this is involving a player's body, and that's how players make their money. How common is this for a team and a player where a medical situation can cause some sort of conflict?
You know what? It's a touchy subject. It can be very controversial depending on who's talking to the player. Of course, the trainer's talking to him. You have 3 to 4 trainers. You have 4 to 5 to 6 doctors that are talking to him. And they all understand how important it is to the organization. You understand how important it is to the owner for him to be on the field. But you can't force an issue. And I think what Indy's done, and I don't know, I wasn't in the building. I don't know how they handled it when he first got hurt, if they kept playing him for a couple of weeks. I know when I was in San Fran, we did that with Alex, and it ruined his season by far. We waited 4 weeks to do the surgery, and he couldn't even throw the ball. He threw a sidearm. We're in Seattle before we had the surgery. So it's very touchy. From my standpoint as a general manager, I could relay the information I get from the trainers and the doctors to the player if they want to talk to me about it. But I would never recommend anything, because they're professionals. I'm a scout. So you got to be really, really delicate about it, because back in the day they just shoot everybody up and then they go out and play. Boom, here you go, Toradol, whatever. Now, especially with the concussion protocol, and shoulder injuries for quarterbacks, or knee injuries for running backs, receivers, or DBs, you got to be protected. And you almost take a safe stance instead of an advanced stance because, they get second opinions. The agents are well aware of what's gone on with certain organizations and what they have players have to do and not do. But it's touchy. But it's part of the business, and it's always going to be part of the business.
You mentioned being part of the business, and your job as a general manager is obviously to put the team in the most successful spot possible. I'm not saying that the Indianapolis Colts want to trade Andrew Luck. I'm not saying it's even there. But if they were going to try to shop him around, I mean, what's the possible return that you have on a guy who is a generational quarterback without a doubt, but one who has been injured now for almost 2 years?
Yeah, it's tough, and it's not just the injury. That's a huge part of it. It's also the contract. They're not going to give up on him, and he won't give up on them either. It's important to him to be a Colt. They've shown loyalty. They drafted him. They gave him a second deal. They made him a very, very wealthy man. And he like I said, he's a loyal guy. And you get into certain spots in certain towns and the cities and whatever, and you know the culture. You know the environment. You know where you're living at. You know where the restaurants are at. You know where the grocery stores are at. And it's tough to move. But I can't foresee them even thinking about trading him. I mean, it's just, he's too valuable. And there's a reason why they gave him what they gave him. And the person he is, you want him leading your team. He'll be back. I mean, if he's not back, then it's a freak injury.
All right, Scott. So let's go to 3 young quarterbacks who actually are on the field. The 2016 draft class was seen, I think, at the quarterback position as being okay, not great. And now it looks like we have 3 potential stars in Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, and Jared Goff. A year and a half into those guys' careers, how would you rank them?
You know what? I'd go Wentz, and then, probably Dak, and then Goff. Although Goff's came on, last year I thought, oh boy, and I wasn't a huge fan of him coming out. I liked Wentz a lot. I like Dak quite a bit, but Wentz has always been my guy. But Goff has shown me this year, I saw him play live his first game this year out in L.A., and he showed me some things, improvement from being a rookie to being a second-year quarterback. And Sean McVeigh is really good with quarterbacks, and I think it's proven out. He's got some weapons around him. He's got a good run game. He's got a receiver. The defense plays well. But Dak's been excellent from day one, and you got to give him credit for that. And Wentz, I think you're seeing all 3 of them, in my opinion, have overstepped how good I thought they'd be this early in their careers.
Well, you mentioned the jump too, Scott, from 2016 to 2017 for Jared Goff. You were with Sean McVeigh in Washington. How big a difference do you think he's made?
Huge, because he's very articulate. He's a humble person. He's a really good offensive mind. He works nonstop, but he's able to get, like he did with Kirk, he's able to get to that quarterback and understand what they can and can't do, and make them feel comfortable in the game plan, and let them know they have confidence. He has confidence in them. The team has confidence in them to make plays. My 2 years with the Skins, before I got there, Jay called the plays the year before, and they were 4-12, and Jay's a good offensive mind too. Don't get me wrong, but my 2 years there, all of a sudden Sean got the play calling duties during the game, and you saw 9,000 yards passing. He clicked with Kirk really quick. They of course they knew each other from them being drafted by the Skins, but Sean just has the personality and the intelligence and the understanding of how to put a quarterback in a good situation. Also, the game plan around him, and each week's different, but he is really, really good at it.
I just feel like the NFL is such a copycat league. Is there any way, can other teams copy what Sean McVay is doing?
Well, you can from the standpoint of scheme, plays and that kind of stuff, but it's also the timing during the game, down in distance, running the ball, throwing the ball, whatever you're doing, a trick play, whatever. But the good ones have, like I said, I was lucky enough to be around Mike Holmgren for 10 plus years. And you talk about a dynamic offensive play caller, and you just felt comfortable when you went out there and knew, okay, boom, we're 3rd and 7, we're in the 4th quarter. He's going to have the right play. And if the players execute it, it's going to work. I've been other places where it's like, oh, smokes, here we go, get the punt team ready. But he's just, and Sean's been lucky to be around football all his life. He's been around good coaches, And like I said, Jay really helped him, the time of the Redskins. And he's just taken off. And again, he's got good players around him. They've done a nice job drafting the last couple of years, had a lot of high picks, and they're starting to pan out now.
All right, Scott. So Josh Gordon has been conditionally reinstated by the NFL. He hasn't played in a regular season game since 2014. He's actually missed 51 of the Browns' last 56 games. What should the expectation for him be coming back?
I don't know for not being around him or seeing him, if they bring him in and run around and that kind of stuff. I know before he left, he was a really talented football player. And he's the type of guy that I would think is always going to be in good shape. That's kind of the way his genetics are. He's a low fat body guy. He's a thinner bone guy. But he's talented, but it's tough to get away from the game, even for 1 year, and for all of a sudden stuff he's been through. Hopefully he's back on track, as a person, which I pray for. But it'll be interesting because he's still relatively young, and he hasn't taken any hits the last couple of years, so medically he should be fine. But still, you never know. It'll be interesting how it shakes out there.
Scott, can the team bring him back? I mean, we learned a lot in that GQ article that he was drinking, that he was getting high before games. Is it possible to bring him back, or at this point, is there just too much history there? Do they have to part ways?
Well, the thing about it, they can. There's no doubt about it. It's happened before in baseball, and basketball, and in football. What you have to be comfortable with is if the organization feels like he's on the right track, and he's proven that he's on the right track, which I'm sure they've been tracking. You give guys second, third chance. Now if they feel there's a chance he's going to embarrass the organization or he's going to go out and do something that they don't respect, then it's really tough. But also, you want the best players you can have on your team, but you also want good people on your team. And I'm not saying he's not a good person. He's gone through some issues, and a lot of guys have in this league. And just to give up on him unless they feel for sure that it's going to be a black-eyed organization. Because if he's not there, he'll be somewhere. If he's clean and healthy and working out well, he'll be signed and he'll play somewhere. I mean, he's still in his late 20s.
The final one for you on this topic, though, Scott, which is he says going back to college, he was, getting messed up before games. Do you remember scouting him? And, we know that he had some red flags, obviously missed some time at Baylor for drug-related issues. But did scouts have any idea it was this bad?
No, and a lot of times we won't because, you get the stuff from at the school. You talk to the coaches, you talk to the counselors, you talk to whatever. Okay, boom, he's been suspended. He's tested positive once, twice, 3 times, whatever. And that's kind of normal, just so you know, around in college football because, a lot of times they're there 4 to 5 years and things happen. You have the domestic stuff, you got drinking, all that stuff. But there's been a lot worse stories coming out of college. The guys are playing the NFL right now than his were. I can promise you that. But then you got to figure it out, and then that's the key thing. And some people have this addiction disease. Then it's tough on them. That's the way they get away. And to see him go through all he's gone through and still trying to get back into it proves to me that he has a passion for the game. He has money. I'm sure he wants more, but he's made enough money to be okay, hopefully, if he's smart with it. But it's a touchy subject because, you never know. Each person's different. He might come out and be lights out, for the next 4 or 5 years. You go back to the Pro Bowls, or he might come out and all of a sudden hit rock bottom again, But I'm pulling for him, and I love the fact that in the NFL and in professional sports, you give guys opportunities to bounce back in their lives.
Love getting the insight from Scott McCloughan and Scott's Spotlight. Thank you so much for that.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Welcome to the Executive Suite. I'm Corey Parson, the Fantasy Executive, with your PFN Fantasy Football Report for week number 10. With Jay Ajayi now in Philadelphia, fantasy owners were wondering which Miami Dolphin running back would be the guy moving forward. In Week 9, Kenyon Drake was in the game for 55% of the snaps, while Damian Williams was in the game for 45% of the snaps. This looks like a true timeshare, at least for now. I would advise fantasy owners to add Kenyon Drake, being that he is the player with the most fantasy upside. In Carolina, until Greg Olsen returns from IR, The Panthers' passing game will feature Devin Funchess and Christian McCaffrey. One of the reasons the Panthers traded away Kelvin Benjamin was so they can get more speed on the field. Wideouts Curtis Samuel and Russell Shepard are the players that can provide that speed. In Week 9, the rookie Samuel played 49 snaps, while Shepard was on the field for 38 snaps. Samuel was worth an add in deeper leagues. Our symmetric rising star for Week 10 is Colts tight end Jack Doyle. Doyle has already gained quite a chemistry with quarterback Jacoby Brissett. Currently, Doyle is second in the NFL in tight end targets, only behind stud Travis Kelce. On the season, Doyle has 50 receptions and 2 touchdowns. 20 of those receptions have come in the past 2 weeks. In the all-important fantasy playoff weeks of 14, 15, and 16, Doyle has matchups versus 3 of the bottom 10 teams versus a tight end. Your symmetric rising star for week number 10 is Colts tight end Jack Doyle. I'm Corey Parson, the fantasy executive from the Executive Suite.
Thanks, Corey. I'm Albert Breer. This is Last Call. Sean McVay's turned around the Rams. Sean McDermott's turned around the Bills. And Doug Peterson has the Eagles flying high in year 2. And you know what comes next. A bunch of teams looking to crib what they did so they can flip the script the same way. So I'm going to give you the one team that to this point in the 2017 season has put on a clinic in how to get it done. And that's the New Orleans Saints. That's right. Sean Payton, Drew Brees, and the rest of the team you forgot about the last few years. After going 7-9, 7-9, and 7-9, New Orleans came into 2017 with the look of a franchise set to bottom out. Brees is 37, Payton's flirted with leaving, and the never-ending effort to fix the defense hasn't worked. So which magic wand did Payton and company wave? It's boring, but there wasn't one. Here it is in 3 words. They drafted well. When I asked Payton last week about where the roster was in April and the need for the class to be strong, he quickly shot back, it had to be. It absolutely had to be, and it has been. In the end, the Saints came away with 4 players they had first-round grades on, which would constitute an off-the-charts haul for any team in the draft's immediate aftermath. Even better, they've delivered on those grades. Big, long corner Marshawn Lattimore is probably the defensive rookie of the year at this point. Ryan Ramczyk has played every snap and has started at both left and right tackle. Marcus Williams is the heady, traffic-controlling center fielder the Saints thought he'd be and has played 99% of the defensive snaps. And Alvin Kamara is averaging 6 yards per on 52 carries and 9 per on 38 catches as the team's offensive Swiss Army knife. And that's without even getting to the fact that Payton believes they have the same intangible qualities that his 2006 draft class had, and that class served as the foundation for the 2009 champions. So you want to know why teams treat draft picks like gold? This is why. The Saints carried tons of dead money for years, missed on some picks, lost others in the Bountygate mess, and so much of the fix was having a couple of good nights in April. Collectively, the 4 aforementioned draftees will cost $6.25 million on the Saints cap this year, or $1 million less than center Max Unger will alone. And those 4 should continue to get better over time, and they're being brought up in-house, all of which might make Brees and Payton stick around longer than they otherwise would have. In short, it's given life to an organization that was stuck in a 3-year rut. So you want the Saints' secret? It's easy to explain and hard to pull off. Load up on draft picks and then go ahead and nail them.